Hi, I'm working in Embrilliance Stitch Artist software, and I'm building a quilt block. My idea is to have a grid of these quilt blocks to fill a 24 by 24 inch quilt. And so I'm using 8 inches as my base block, and I'm working in Embrilliance Stitch Artist. I've got the level 3 tools, and I thought I would just make a video showing kind of the process that I'm doing. So what I have over here on my screen is kind of where I've started, but what's important to notice is the object window. So right over here on the right side of the screen, I have my object window, and this is the design. So I'm going to put this as my I'm going to call this my what am I calling? Ooh, I deleted it. Let's undo that. Command C, Command C. Let's get all those back. Did I do a new thing? Nope. Undo, undo, undo. Okay. The nice thing about Embrilliance is that I can undo up to 24 times to get back to where I was. So I need to give this a name and save it before I get started, or before I get too far into the process. So we're going to call this, the idea in my head that it is Mod Textures. So that's what I'm calling it. And I may come up with a different name later, but this is the Mod Textures 8-inch block. And this is a texture block, not necessarily a pieced block. So I'm not doing any patchworking. I'm doing embroidery for each square. Okay, so the idea is, oh, I didn't save it, I just put it over there. So let's do File, Save Working File As. I gotta put it somewhere. We're gonna put this in a new folder. We're gonna call it, we're going to put it in my quilt blocks folder, quilting in the hoop. This is going to be the texture, Mod Textures. How about that? Mod Textures. All right. It's in the Mod Textures folder, and I'm going to call this the, just for right now, DBD Mod Texture 8-inch block. There. Okay, we're saved, and I can go on from here without worrying about losing my work. So what I have in the on the screen up here is I have a couple of different things. So the first thing I have is I have an 8.5-inch square. Now, an 8.5-inch square, when I insert it into a quilt block with 1/4-inch seams, will become an 8-inch finished piece. So I'm thinking about the seam allowances on the block between each place where there is a seam. So if this is the very middle, there'll be a block on either side taking a 1/4-inch seam allowance so that they will all end up 8 inches. So ideally 3 of them across would be 24 inches, and this piece is going to be 24 inches by 24 inches. The piece that I'm building is actually a part of an installation that's going to be exhibited at H&H Americas in May. And so this piece is one of the Mod Textures blocks, and I'm going to have, let's see, if there's 3 across and 3 down, 3 times 3, 3 8 inches, so there'll be 9 blocks total. Let's do some math real quick. Let's draw this out. So I'm going to have these, 8-inch blocks. That's not 8 inches, but we're just going to pretend, and that needs to be kind of squarish, so we'll do, make sure that's a square. Okay, so these squares over here down at the bottom, I can see that these are about 4 inches square. And I'm just doing this to kind of show off each one. So 8, so we'll say Control C, let's see, copy, paste. So we've got 1, 2, and then 3. So that would be 8 inches across. And we're going to copy those and paste them again, and then, so that would be down, paste them again. So 8, 8, 8 across is 24, 8, 8, 8 down is 24. Paste one more instance of them to get these 2 blocks right here, and then flip them 45 degrees or 90 degrees so they fit in there. So that's roughly If I change all the colors, you could actually see what I'm doing, right? So let's change the color. Right now I have white thread showing, so let's do pink. So you can see there's a grid of these possibly 8 or 9 blocks. 9. This is good for me to see because I've got, you know, 9 blocks to work with, and you know, they'll all kind of fit up next to each other, and they'll be sewn with their 1/4 inch seams. And I keep telling everybody that I'm not a quilter, but I am hacking at quilts just kind of backwards using my embroidery software. So here's me hacking at, you know, a quilt layout, right? Okay, so this is what we're going to end up with. We're going to have 9 8-inch blocks that make one 24 by 24 inch mini quilt that will be my part of the installation. Okay, so roughly that's what we're going to have. And let me just put some stitches on those just so they stand out and you can kind of see them better. It's hard to see in the software unless they have stitches like that. Bam. Now that's a lot, you know, more interesting, isn't it? Okay, so here's my block that I'm working on. That's just for, let me lasso all of those, and I'm going to cut those and put them in a new file, new page, paste them there, and that's going to be my grid. So I'm going to call that Mod Textures 8-inch grid outline. Okay, just so I have that, I'm going to save that to file, whoops, file, save working file as grid. Just call that the grid. So I have something to stick it all into later. Okay, I'm done with that. I can close it and get rid of this. Okay, let's go back to our block here. So here's this is my first block. Real interesting, right? So the idea is that I'm going to be using Cuddle fabric. I'm going to be using the new Quilting Cuddle, which has some really beautiful prints. I'm trying to keep it simple and just show off, you know, the embroidery quilting and the textures. So that's why I'm calling this the Mod Textures. And what I want to do is, I know that with Cuddle, sometimes the stitching can actually sink down into the pile of the fabric. And so what I want to do is I want to think about doing some embroidery that's really bold, that sticks up over the background fabric. But also I don't want to completely fill it with thread, because the idea is that the Cuddle fabric will shine and look interesting, and then the embroidery will give it texture. So I thought about this mod kind of thing, and I don't know why I think about weird shapes when I go different places, but different shapes, different places have different vibes to me. And when I went to H&H last year, I got this mid-century modern feel, and I don't know why. So that's just what I'm thinking, and that's just what I'm going with. So the idea is that these are going to be like kind of mid-century modern kind of shapes of embroidery inside each of these blocks, and I think that'll look cool. We'll see when I get there. So this is what I've got now. I got a line, and I've got a little ball at the end of it, and the little ball is just simply filled with stitches. This is just a run stitch that's a chain effect. If we zoom in real close here, you can kind of see how the embroidery texture is this overlapping chain stitch. It's really actually very cool when you do it with a thread. It's an engineered stitch, so there's not anything else I can do to that stitch, but I like it for the run because I think it'll show up well on the fabric. It won't just sink in. It'll actually, the stitches they're big enough to sit up on top. Okay, and I've got this little ball, and I need a little ball on the other end, so I'm going to do a copy and paste this little ball at the other end. And I'm thinking about how this stem is going to run, because what I don't want is a bunch of jump stitches that I've got to cut at the end, because that annoys me. And so I'm thinking about the pathing of this as part of my process. So the better I path it now, the less jump stitches I've got to cut later. So I've got a ball here that starts and ends where these little bow ties are. Then I've got my running stitches, and it's gonna, we're gonna switch that outline reverse points. So it's gonna start down here and end up there. I need to change those bow ties. You can see that as I move all that, those jumps go away. And then it'll start right here up at this ball. And so I've got a good path right here. Now, this isn't centered in the square, and that's intentional, because what I want to do now, I want to take this shape and I want to do a copy. So all of those pieces over here in my object window, and then I want to paste them, not right on top of each other. I'm going to actually take and spin them around. And I don't want to shrink the size of them, but I do want to kind of have them skewed off a little bit so that this doesn't look quite like an X. I had drawn it out first and it was kind of like an X, and I didn't like that. So I don't want it to really look like an X. I want it to be kind of funky. So I've got funky here. And so now I'm going to do another one. I'm going to paste another one, but this one I am going to alter a bit. So I'm going to shrink this line. Okay, so I'm making it quite a bit shorter, and which means I've got to move the ball that it starts with up to where that line starts. Okay, and now I can take this chunk, that new one I just made, and I can rotate it again. And I want it to kind of be off center like this. So there. And you can see my ball is not touching, so that there will be a jump stitch there, and I don't want that. And now I've got a cool, I got a cool line with these balls on the end of it. The idea is that these balls, I will actually put a crystal in them when I get done, because I think that'll be fun, and I like to have fun, and I like sparkle, and I love the fabric that I'm going to be using for this. So I'm adjusting right here the angle of these stitches for these circles, because I want the stitches to kind of all lay a certain way and catch the light with the thread a certain way, and I need them to be angled differently. So I'm thinking about that. So now that the stitches are kind of lined up, kind of mirroring each other, okay, and reflecting each other on each end of their respective ray. Do I need one more set of those? I think I do. I think I need one more. So let's do this. Let's add one more of these little guys, copy, and we'll paste that, and then I'll rotate that second instance of it. And maybe that's going to be, how do I feel about that? I don't feel like that's quite in the right place, so let's scooch it right about there. And I think it actually needs to be a different length also. Maybe. I feel like it needs to be slightly smaller. I think it needs to be smaller. So let's shrink this line a little bit. We're adjusting this line just a touch, and then we're going to put the ball down here right up on the line. And now I like that a lot. I'm going to double check the angle of my stitching across these little balls, and that is pretty cool. I like that a lot. Okay, so that is a texture chunk that when I stitch this out, it'll kind of smash, it'll smash in there, but it'll be, I don't know, it'll be quilty enough. I'm going to quilt through all three layers. So I'm going to use the cuddle on the front, probably cotton on the back, and soft and stable in the middle. And so it's going to be, it's quite hefty, but I may try it a couple of different ways just to see what I like best. And now that I'm looking at this shape one more time, I got to tweak this. So sometimes it just doesn't feel quite right till I mess around with it. I feel like it's scooting over. That looks better. I don't know why it looks better. It just feels better to me. And so I like that. So one last thing that I need to do as I'm, before I go to the machine, I want to make this so that I've got this outside border that is the actual cut line, and then this is the actual sewing line. So this one's the cut line, this is the sewing line, and I'll actually sew on these lines when I sew them together at the sewing machine. So that is where everything needs to stay. This line doesn't need to stitch until the end, because when you put stitches, machine embroidery stitches, especially over fabric that's already over the batting, the stitches draw this fabric in. So if I do these first, this block will not end up 8 inches or 8.5 inches. So I need to do this last so that after all the stitches are put down, then I will draw stitch the 8-inch square to say, okay, now you've got 8 inches worth of stuff, and you can do that. And so I might actually do one more bigger one of these. Let's do one, Control C, Control V, and let's do the biggest one kind of second, and I'm going to do this one at 9 inches. Let's get this one 9 inches by 9 inches, okay? So I have a good inch of wiggle room, and I want to center it. Utility, center in the hoop. That makes that just right around the edges. I need it to be a totally different color, something I haven't used before, just so it stops. And this will hold it all down, but this one will actually be the delineation. So do I need that one? Yeah, I think I do, but I want to replace the stitch order of these, so move those last. Okay, so I've got this is the cut line again, remember, and then this is the sewing line. The placement stitch will go first, and let me label these. So these are this is the placement one, and this is the 8-inch sew line. Okay, so it could be a single stitch. Do I need a tie in and out there? I'm going to put one in just for myself, but I'm going to make my run a little bit longer stitches because I don't necessarily need that there. It's just a guideline for me. Same thing with the placement stitch. I don't need it there. It's just a guideline, so I do want it to tie in and out so that I can actually see it. This placement one just shows me where to put the fabric on the hoop, and it holds it down for me. So again, that can be tie in and out. And then I'm going to make the stitches a little bit longer, not as long as the others, but a little bit longer because I just need it to go fast. This isn't a whole lot of stitches, but this is way easier for me to do it on my embroidery machine than it is for me to just do, you know, these things right here. The other thing that I want to do is I want to check that where all these intersections are, they're not too bulky right here in the middle, because I have these 4 lines of stitching and I don't want it to be kind of chunky. I may need to break up these lines so that they meet in the middle rather than overlap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of the tools in Stitch Artist here to double check that they're not too bulky there. So when I click this density map up here, I get a kind of a rendering of what the stitch looks like. And do you see this little bit of hotness right here? Let's zoom in there. This hot area, or the places where there's red, means that there is a potential for there to be some buildup right there. When there's a lot of buildup, where there's a lot of threads that connect or overlap each other, you can get kind of bird nesty, and so you've got a lot of stuff. And just like with quilting, we don't want a lot of bulk. We want it to run efficiently. So that tells me that maybe I should consider having each of these runs meet in the middle and not just zoom from one dot to the other and go across. So let's take this texture thing off. Oh, see, if you do it in this one, you can see how this is just the actual rendering of stitches. There's a big bunch there, and as these later runs go across there, they may kind of bulk up. Then there, it's not going to make my embroidery machine is going to be able to handle it, but I may get some chunky sounds. I might break a needle, I might break a thread. So I'm looking out for those things right here in that. I do like the way that looks, though. It's so pretty. Anyway, let's get that off there. Go back to our 3D view, and that's what I've got right here. And then let's start adjusting some of these stitches. So I can think about, like, maybe I'm thinking about starting here and then going back out, right? So instead of having lines that go across, I have these that start here and end over here, and they kind of meet in the middle, right? So let's do another one. Like maybe it's this one connected to this one, okay? And then, oops, I closed it. I didn't want to close it. Undo that. Control Z undoes whatever I did to do that. I don't want to do that, so let's undo that. There. Okay, so I don't want to close to shape. Let's go back here again. Let's do this one to here and this one. And when I go through the middle, I'm kind of trying to not hit the middle, but just go near it, so it has the idea of hitting the middle, but it doesn't actually hit the middle. Let's do this one right here. I'm using a line node. You can see how my cursor is the cross, and I've got that little square right there. So just barely over, I'm going to hit that close to the middle and then go out to my ball. Save, and then which ones have I not done? So I should have this one, this one, this one. 1, 2, 3. I feel like I missed some. Oh, I see which one I need to do. I need to do this one right here, this one. And go straight down. So I feel like it's okay if I have 2 of these angle lines hitting each other. I just don't want 4 of them. So let's delete these big lines. Okay, so now I've got these 4 lines right here, and I'm going to look at them and see where my angles are. I want them to be close, but not right on top of each other. So see, I'm getting them close, but not overlapping. Okay, there we go. And it actually leaves a little bit of a hole in there, but that hole's going to be filled with thread, so it's cool. So now let's apply stitches to that. I'm going to use the same stitch that I had, that chain stitch, and that looks really good. Okay, one thing that's different about this chain run than the other one is that now my little arrows are pointing different ways. So these arrows are pointing, see how it comes to a point right there and a point right there? They're pointing different directions than they were, instead of like starting at one place and ending the other. And that's okay. If it matters a whole lot, I can tuck the point up there underneath the ball, and I'll make the balls end at the end of each of those runs and not at the end of the thing, because if I do all the lines first and then I go back and do the balls, I've got a ball, 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 and then they're gonna there's gonna be jump stitches or thread tails to trim, and I don't want to do any of that. I mean, it's not bad, I just don't want to do it. Okay, let's scooch that one's little guy right to the end. And now let's go back and look at our density map. Okay, I can still see some red dots. Now, it's not as many as there were before. You can see that there is a little red dot there. That's just where the stitch as engineered, but it's not as hot as it was before. And I can further adjust that by manipulating these little arrows kind of away from each other just a bit. It's just where those little places where the engineered stitch kind of hits at those angles. Okay, so see, I scooted them away. They kind of, it appears that they come to a meeting point, but they're not overlapping anymore. And now the hot spots that are left are really just from those stitches overlapping each other, just barely. And that is plenty. That's totally fine with me. That's not going to be an issue. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to path these. So I want my placement and sew lines. That's actually not a placement. What's that called? That's going to be called my cut line, right? Cut lines. And then the sew line. Do I need it to say 8-inch? No, I do not. Well, I'm going to leave it there. So this is going to be my 8 1/2 inch cut line. How about that? I'll leave it there. I'll allow it. And then I want to move these guys up here kind of in the beginning, right? And then I'm going to think about where the balls are and get these in order. So I've got the first one right here with this line, and I need to take this ball, which is in place number 11, and put him in place number 2. Okay, so it's going to start here at this ball, right? Start here, and see where the start and stops on that ball are right there. Then I'm going to start my line and end at that one, and this ball is in position number, I need it to be at between 1-3 and 1-4, and so let's find out where this ball is in our lineup. He's at number 12, and I want him to be at number 4, so I scoot him up to there, and now he's there. Yay! He's good. Okay, who's next? Now, let's see. So I'm minimizing the jumps. I'm going to have jumps between these shapes, but I don't want so many jumps. So if my next line is this one right here, that's cool because it's going to jump from here to here. So the next ball needs to be number 5, and right now that ball is at number 10. So let's scoot him up to number 5. All right, so now my line is going to start right under the ball, finish at this bottom right ball, and let's find out where he is. That ball needs to be at number 7, and right now he is at number 10, so let's scoot him up to position number 7. All right, he's good. Now, this line right here, so it starts up here and it's going to end down here, so I need to find this ball and make it number 9, right? No, number 8, so it goes in front of that. So this one's going to go up at position number 8, then the line, which ends down here at this ball, and that one is at number 11, and I want it to be number 10. We're almost done. Okay, let's look at the last line. Starts at ball. All we have to do is switch that place. There's the ball, there's the line, and there's the last ball. Ta-da! So we're good. I'm really happy with that. Now, since I'm using kettle fabric, I'm going to do one more thing. This isn't something that you have to do. It's just something that I want to do. And I may turn this off when I get to the machine after I've done a test to see how it comes out. But I'm going to try it out right now and see what happens. So I'm going to put a little bit of what we call a knockdown stitch behind this. So to put a knockdown stitch, I'm using the features in Embrilliance Enthusiast, and I'm going to go over here to Utility, Add Knockdown Stitching, and I'm going to put the stitching that I like to use for a cuddle background, because cuddle is a minky fabric. Minky has a pile, it sticks up, sometimes the fibers come through in your stitching and they alter the way your stitches look, because the fluff is in there in the stitches. So if I put a bi-directional knockdown stitch, it holds down most of the fibers. So that's what I'm going to do for here. The rest of the settings are fine, although I don't want it to be like a big puffy bubble of stitches that are kind of shadowing the fabric. I just want the barest outline inflation around my stitches. So I'm going to put it that it is a 1 millimeter outline. Okay, so it's just a shadow behind the stitches to give it a little bit of holding the fiber down. These stitches aren't big, but I do want them to pop, and so I'm going to just inflate it a little bit and let's see what happens. So when I do that, I get this cool shape behind it. I'm going to change the color so you can really see that. If I change the color of that underlay, and I'm going to do something dark because the fabric I'm going to use is dark. Look at that. So now my stitches will really sit on top of that knockdown stitch, and they'll be a little bit more visible on the cuddle fabric, which I think will be kind of cool. Now I'm going to have to adjust this because these are 2 separate designs in my object window, and I want them to all stitch similarly. So I really need to run this placement stitch way up here in front of everything else. Okay, so all of this doesn't matter, nothing else is overlapping, so it'll be fine. I've got separate designs, but this is roughly what I've got. Actually, you know, just let me do this right here. Create, design, combine designs, and now everything's in one design over here with lots of parts. I'm happy with that. I'm ready to go to the machine and test it out. When I get this all done, what I want to do is see if these little balls here are going to look good with the sparkle on them. That's what I want. I'm really just doing all this so I can put, it's an excuse to put rhinestones on a quilt. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go do this. Ooh. Yeah, I might do it this a couple of ways, but stay tuned. This is a fun process, and I really enjoy doing this. So stay tuned and see how this goes. Thanks for watching.